Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, which is the last webinar for 2024. And we will start up again early 2025. But I want to thank you for showing up today. Today's webinar is titled Practical Sustainability for the Tile Industry. I'm Jim Olson with the National Tile Contractors Association. I want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend today's webinar sponsored by Schluter. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to remind you that during the webinar you'll be muted. Please use the questions area on your computer to type in your questions, and we'll answer those questions at the end of the presentation. If the audio on your computer is poor, make sure your computer volume is turned up, or call the number on the invite to the webinar and listen on your phone. All NTCA webinars are available to watch at any time on the NTCA YouTube channel shortly after the webinars are presented. This gives you easy access to watch and or share all current and past programs at your convenience. All right, today I'm happy to introduce today's presenter, Dan Marvin. He's the Director of Product Standards and Sustainability for Schluter Systems, the leading supplier of waterproofing and finishing solutions for the tile industry. Dan has been the chairman of the Tile Council of North America's Green Initiative Committee since 2008 and is a frequent presenter on sustainability and standard topics for surfaces, coverings, and Total Solutions Plus. I want to welcome Dan. Thank you, Dan. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Can you see my slide, my screen? Well, assuming that's a yes, we'll go ahead and get started.
I'm sorry, I turned my microphone off. Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, perfect. Well, first, an apology to those of you who showed up and when you tried to do this in October and we weren't able to get all the technical difficulties ironed out, so I apologize for that. I'm glad that you were able to make it back for this rescheduled session. One thing, if you did attend Total Solutions Plus and heard the lady talking about AI, this is an AI generated image. If you ask AI to interpret ceramic tiles saving the earth as a superhero, they come up with Jim Olson in a green outfit here with, interestingly enough, five fingers. That was one of the things the lady at TSP mentioned about AI generated images. They don't always have the right number of digits. So assuming he has a thumb over here somewhere too, he's got one too many fingers, but still a good likeness of Jim. And clearly he's out there saving the world through sustainability. So kind of the core question that I'm going to try to get my hands around for practical interpretation of sustainability is, what is it anyway? And I have on here that if you ask 100 people what sustainability is, that you'll get 100 different answers. That's probably pretty true. Everybody has their own kind of take on what you're talking about when you're talking about sustainability. The United Nations actually had a group get together and try to hash through a good definition for it. And what they came up with is one that makes sense to me. It's meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability to future generations to meet their own needs. So you don't want to take away resources, you don't want to pollute the earth. All the things that we talk about when we talk about sustainability are sort of captured in this statement. So for the tile industry, what we've been doing for the last really almost 2 decades now is finding our niche in that whole sustainability equation and able to A, better communicate it, and B, improve our place in the world as far as sustainability goes. So what I'm going to go through today is a lot of what the tile industry has been doing to define sustainability, prove sustainability, and improve sustainability. So if you're customer facing, if you're dealing with anybody who's dealing with a project, chances are that you're going to get some questions that start to border on the sustainability topic. So once you get past the, how much is this going to cost me, the next usual questions fall into one of these categories. And I do want to say that we track all the questions that come into us at Schluter about all of these topics. And I can tell you that what I have on the screen are typically, in one way or the other, what people are going to ask you about sustainability. And an extension of that is also, once they ask the question, they want you to be able to prove it. And so a lot of what has been developed for the tile industry is sort of proof of these concepts that we are sustainable, and here's the reason why. So the first thing, very basically, is it green? Is it a green product? What's in tile? What's in the products that I'm putting into my built environment? How does it impact the environment? Not just the air quality inside the building, but really the entire environment, from extraction all the way through end of life. Where is it made is becoming more and more frequently a question of interest, and I'll get into that in a few slides. What comes off of it? I'm not sure this is the best English. Autocorrect says it's not, but basically what on that product comes off in the form of usually volatile organic chemicals, something that you can be exposed to because you put it into your environment. How long do these products last? And how does it compare to other products that may be out there on the market? And then really at the nuts and bolts level, does it give me points for the program I'm working on, whether that's a LEED program, a well building program, green. There's all sorts of different green programs out there, or it may just be things that an architect, a designer, a spec writer is interested in individually, things like recycled content or whatever. There's a lot of different, what I call onesie twosie types of questions that you'll get where it's not into one of these big categories, but it's something that someone is interested in and wants to have a discussion with you about. So really, to become conversant, to be comfortable with this topic of sustainability, I'm sorry, you will have to learn a few acronyms. I'm going to throw them in here. I'm going to help to define them. But you'll hear them recurringly, especially as you get these questions, if you're in a function where you have to deal with questions from customers. So they can be a little bit daunting, but you can really be prepared for them by knowing some of the language and knowing to find some quick answers, knowing where to go. The good thing is that the tile industry has been very proactive in trying to give you some of these answers that you can give to your customers. So a lot of the information is out there if you know where to look for it. And my task here today is to kind of point you in the right direction. I'm not going to make you a sustainability expert in 50 minutes, but I can certainly give you some great resources where if this topic is one that's of interest to you, you can go and find more information in a way that has been presented by the tile industry to really kind of encapsulate our entire message on sustainability. Like most things, the TCNA handbook has some great information about it. So the TCNA Green Initiative was born in around 2008. We had been having conversations about it for years before that. Bill Greasy and I were put in charge of the committee for the Green Initiative, which has had a bunch of different emphases over the years. And a lot of what I'm going to be presenting today is outcomes from that concentration, getting all that expertise together in one place, written down in a way that makes some sense. So since 2008, we've been trying to give tools to help answer the questions about sustainability. There is a big section in the middle of that TCNA handbook as you flip through it. It's conveniently green, so you can see the green color and go, I'm in the right place. And that's really going to hit on a lot of these topics that I cover. So consider this a little bit of a preview of what's in there and a little bit of an explanation of why. So again, that first question, that very first one on our slide is it green? We did put together as one of our very first initiatives a standard for what makes a tile quote unquote green. That's called the Green Squared Standard. Maybe you've seen it, hopefully you've seen it. It's got the snazzy logo that you see there on your screen, and it also has a bunch of definitions of what goes into a green squared product. So to be green squared, you actually have to prove that you're doing things the right way and that the final outcome, that tile product or installation material that goes with the tile product, has some beneficial uses, has some beneficial characteristics when it comes to the world of sustainability. So we did put together this multi-attribute standard. Multi-attribute means, quite simply, there's many various things that you have to check off the box. It's not just a simple certification like a volatile organic chemical like Green Guard or Fluoroscore, one of those programs that just does a single attribute. This actually covers a wide variety of things about a tile or an installation product that makes it green. So we put together a fairly good sized group. We had 45 participants in our committee, most of whom are still active in the industry today. And we all put our heads together and tried to come up with what really defines a green product from the perspective of sustainability. I do have a link here. It has its own webpage, Green Squared Certified. So if you want some more information on this particular attribute of sustainability, it's a great place to click and get a lot more information. Again, I'm not going to make you an expert. I'm sort of scratching the surface here, but by going and following up on some of these places where you can find more information, you can really get a pretty good picture about tile and tile installation. So what's in it? It's broken down into a few different areas. Product characteristics. So these are things that are inherent to tile or the installation products you're using with tile. That could be things like recycled content, minimal packaging, getting materials from nearby. There's a bunch more in there. Again, that greensquaredcertified.com website is a good resource if you really want to dig down deeper. Then there's also the manufacturing process. That can be things like the environmental management plan the company has in place. How do they prevent pollution? What ways do they address energy efficiency? A bunch of manufacturing information is packed into the standard. Corporate governance, just how do they deal with the fact that there are a lot of different government entities that require things like air quality monitoring and water quality monitoring. Are they in compliance with all of those requirements? And innovation, there was some credits there for if they're doing things above and beyond just the basics, that they can get credited for those as well. So that might be things like having solar panels on the roof or using geothermal heating for their operations. Things are above and beyond what's actually in the specifics of the standard. So moving on from the Green Squared standard into more kind of, again, those more specific areas. One of the more common questions that we do get is ingredient information, and we get those questions in a lot of different forms. So you really need to be able to sort of speak the language to understand which question it is you're getting, and then how you can reply in a way that's going to satisfy the person who's asking the question. One of the main ones out there are health product declarations. These are documents that are specifically mentioned in the LEED program. So if you're working on a LEED project, chances are somebody's going to ask you for an HPD for your product. There are some other ones out there. Declare labels are also dealing with this idea of disclosing what is in the product. Red list free determinations. There is a program called Well Building. The International Living Futures Institute has a list of chemicals that they don't want to see in products. That's a red list. And then by making a determination that the product is red list free, you're basically stating that the product that they're buying does not have any of those bad actors in it as far as well building is concerned. Safety data sheets, they've been around the longest. They're not as detailed as an HPD, but they're on that same path where they're saying what's in the product and what sort of gloves or safety goggles or other types of things you need to handle the product safely while you're installing it. So hopefully you're already aware of safety data sheets. They're just the starting point for providing that ingredient disclosure data. Product claims for manufacturers, so that could be something on a technical data sheet or simply on the product packaging that makes a claim it doesn't contain a particular product, doesn't contain PVC, or it doesn't, whatever that thing is, the manufacturer is stating that's not in there. If you're in California, Prop 65, and this is on packaging everywhere, not just in California, but it's regulatory there. Prop 65 is a warning system where you know that something in that product is known to cause cancer or have reproductive system harm. You have to make those statements as a manufacturer if it's in there. Cradle to Cradle is another certification, sort of in the same ballpark as a declare label. And then manufacturers' documents, like technical data sheets, might have a list of ingredients on them. So as you're getting these requests, they can take these forms. There can be other forms. People can ask you for a specific chemical if it's in there. Again, it's up to you to decide how to answer it. As a manufacturer, Schluter is trying to give you the tools to be able to have those conversations with customers. Also, the industry is trying to do that. And the way they're doing that is with this material ingredient guide. So the material ingredient guide is a look at what's actually in tile, sort of an aggregate as a whole. So this isn't any specific tile. The material ingredient guide was really designed to be what they call an industry average type of a document, where you look at all the tile that's available and you come up with some ranges for the things that could be in the tile, and then you disclose that. So by doing this, you have a pretty good idea that inside of tile, you're going to find ball clay, some sort of elastonite, a shale, and a slag. So these are the four big categories, and then you see the subcategories next to those on the slide. So there's a lot of silica in these products, aluminum oxide, there's iron oxide, titanium, and it gives you the ranges for what those materials look like. So the material ingredient guide was designed as a way to at least give people some guidance on what's in tile from a big picture perspective, and then they can take that information. Individual tile manufacturers can drill down and say, okay, for my tile, we have this, this, and this, but we don't have these other things. So you can, it's a two-pronged approach. One, you have the material ingredient guide, and then two, perhaps you have a product specific sheet like an HPD that can be provided for the tile that they are selecting. As a manufacturer, most manufacturers, and I'm not going to say all here because there are definitely manufacturers that have a different approach, but the health product declaration, Don Haynes, I don't know if you're on the call, but Don was just elected to the board for the group that oversees this whole process. HPDs are, again, that repository of what's in the product and what are the potential health impacts that could be caused by the products that are in here. So very commonly people say, hey, I'm working on a lead project, I need HPDs, EPDs, can you provide those for the tile, or can you provide those for the mortar? If you're working with a company that has already prepared these, great, you're able to provide them directly. What you'll find is right now a lot of companies are having those discussions internally about what's the best way to address some of these areas. They either have something already prepared or are in the process of preparing it. Quite often it takes the form of this HPD document. Again, not going to make an HPD expert, but at least now you've been exposed to the acronym. You have an idea of what's in that document, and you also have an idea of who's asking for it and why. So if they're asking for ingredient disclosure, having an HPD is a quick and easy way to give them the information that they're asking for. The next topic and the next acronym that we'll talk about is the Environmental Product Declaration, the EPD, and where HPDs deal with what's the impact on human health, EPDs deal with what's the product's impact on the environment. EPDs are really getting into questions like what's the impact on the air? What's the impact on soil? What's the impact on water? The other very critical part of an EPD and why these are being requested more and more is because EPDs get into what's the carbon footprint for that product. And as people are starting to have more informed discussions about global warming and greenhouse gases and carbon emissions, what they want is some way of determining that they're using products that have a low carbon footprint. That information ultimately comes out of an EPD. So they're a common request for products because they're in projects like LEED, but they're also a common request because state of California, a lot of EU countries, it's sort of spreading across the US, are starting to use EPDs for that carbon footprint information that is so critical when we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions. TCNA has created an industry-wide EPD. If you're familiar with the LEED program, you'll know that LEED gives points not just for product-specific EPDs, but also for what I'll refer to as an industry average EPD, similar to the discussion we just had about material ingredient guide. We've taken all of the environmental impacts that go into making tile as a generic sense and created this industry-wide EPD for not just tile, but also cement, mortar, and grout. So you have three parts of the whole system that you know fairly specifically what all of those impacts are going to look like. And then by participating in those efforts, the companies that helped out with creating the EPDs were able to put together specific EPDs for their products as well at the same time with the reduced cost. So a lot of this is trying to figure out how to not only have the information, but have the information in a way that doesn't break the bank for the company that's putting it together. Again, I'm not going to make an EPD expert, but this is really kind of the heart and soul of what the document is. There's a lot of pages of information. All of them are good to understand and know. At the end of the day, what an EPD is doing is gathering information about energy, about waste streams, about transportation, and putting that all together to come up with numbers for things like the impact on water, the impact on air, the impact on soil, and then this GWP. Oops, sorry about that. Let me go back here. GWP here is global warming potential. That's your carbon footprint. So when people start to ask for, hey, what's your carbon footprint for a number and want a number, that's where they'll go to the EPD and you can start to give them that number. For companies like Schluter, we've then gone the next step by participating in that industry average effort. We've gone the next step and come up with our product specific EPD for our mortars in this case. We do have other EPDs for other products as well. Again, this is a way ultimately where people are trying to get where they can compare one company's product to another company's product. We aren't there yet. I will say there's different ways you can put together an EPD. Quite often they aren't directly comparable, but it's getting there. That's the end goal that the sustainability world really wants to try to get to, is how do we choose the lowest carbon footprint, or how do we choose the least impact on air quality and put that into our building. So that's why people are asking for EPDs, and this, for me as a manufacturer, is also a way for me to benchmark where we are now and how we can do it better. So I keep stressing internally at Schluter, there's, yes, the goal is to have EPDs that we can give to customers, but the secondary goal is to have a way of knowing where we're at now and how we can get to a state where we're using less carbon. So that's my spiel on EPDs. Again, the industry average information is all available through the TCNA. I do urge you to do some follow-up digging on these topics so you can get more conversant in them. If this is the first time you've been exposed to them, just know these are the core documents that are being sent around in sustainability circles to try to address some of the questions from the sustainability world. Starting in 2023, we really started to see where it's made become a much bigger part of the equation. Prior to that, where it was made was important in, say, the LEAD program, in the sense that they were trying to get people to buy materials local to the job site to the extent possible. But now the emphasis has become trying to comply with the Inflation Reduction Act requirements for this Build America, Buy America concept. So for at least American construction in the US, if there is a federal source of funding for that project, they want the person, architect, designer, spec writer, putting together the materials list to assess whether the material is made in America. And there are some requirements for what that can look like. It has to be 65% produced and sourced and created in the United States to be considered made in America for this. We get a lot of these types of requests. For some of our products, it's an easy discussion. Yes, we're making them in the US. We'll send you a piece of paper that says that. For others, though, it starts sort of a domino effect where they have to determine, okay, this product isn't made in the US, but is there anybody currently making it in the US that could provide this product and give me that VA Build America, Buy America Act assurance? And sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. If there isn't, they can get an exclusion and still get the tax breaks for using made in America products. So this is a little bit of a complicated one. I lump it under sustainability because we get the requests a lot, and I think it does ultimately impact the amount of energy it takes to get products from halfway around the world to the US market. So it's always better to buy local if you can. This just gives it a little more teeth because it's now a dollars and cents discussion. All right, so again, my bad English here, what comes off of it? What is that product putting into my inherent air quality inside the building? Usually that takes the shape of volatile organic chemicals. So usually what people compare this to is that new car smell. When you get into a new car, that's your products inside that car off-gassing and creating a significant signature smell. All products have the potential to create volatile organic compounds and then for them to come off into the air. That doesn't mean all products do. And so a lot of it is proving A, that my product either doesn't have any, or B, that it is below certain thresholds for what would be considered dangerous. And I will say, just because you smell it doesn't mean that it's dangerous, but if the concentration gets high enough to start impacting human health, then it's something that people really need to know about in their built environment. So we get a lot of requests for VOC testing. There are a lot of programs. I mentioned a few of them earlier, Green Guard, Floor Score. There's a number of different programs that all go back to the same state of California guidelines on how much VOC is too much VOC. And so what people really want is, are you below these thresholds? So sometimes that takes the shape of you must have the certification. More often though, they're really looking for a way to prove that the VOC limits are below the state of California requirement in the Collaborative for High Performance Schools, the CHIPS standard. One thing that we've been using internally is testing from IPA Labs. What is IPA Labs? So Tile Council of North America used to have their own branded labs, TCNA labs, that would do testing. Recently, the last couple of years, they have, I won't say spun that off because it's not a spin-off. It's still the same core group working at TCNA, but they wanted to make the point that, hey, we're not just testing tile, we can test all sorts of things. You know, we've got the equipment and the expertise. So they created the International Product Assurance Laboratory logo. And one of the tests that they've been doing is for this VOC emissions. And VOC emissions testing, I should have put a little picture on here. It would have really helped. But basically, you put it in a box that looks a lot like a microwave, whatever that product is. The air is concentrated and pulled off of the top of the surface of the product, and then a computer analyzes what's in that air that's been extracted from that chamber. It's what they call a small chamber test. By doing that, the computer gives you analysis of all of the organic compounds that are in that sampling, and if they're above a certain threshold, that's when they become a problem. So LEED has requirements. All of the programs, the main programs for green construction have requirements, most of them going back to that California requirement for how much is too much. So when IPA Labs is doing this testing, they're telling you, okay, here's the program that you might be interested in this case, LEED. Here's what the criteria are for a LEED project, and then here's the results for your product. So we said in CurdyFix, one of our products that has the potential to have some VOCs, they tested it, they didn't detect any VOCs, and that proves that we comply with the LEED version 4.1 requirements. There are many other labs out there that do this. We've been working closely with IPA Labs because it represented an opportunity for TCNA. If you are interested in having any of this testing done, reach out to them through their website. They'll be happy to set you up with testing. They can steer you in the right direction about what's coming off of the products that you're putting into your environment. The other way to handle that as somebody who's providing information to interested parties is to already have done it and to be able to send it out. So if you're working with a company that has the testing already done, make sure you have that in your files. So upon request, you can immediately send it out. I'll just say it, VOC testing is one of the key things you should have available to give out on request, because it's one of the very first things everybody asks for when they're starting to work on a sustainability project. All right, so one of the next questions that was on my first slide is, how long is the product going to last? And believe it or not, we actually have a fairly lengthy discussion about this topic whenever we sit down to talk about sustainability for the tile industry. Why is that? Well, you can make a product that has a very low carbon footprint that only lasts for 20 minutes, and then you have to replace it. And then over the many iterations of time it takes to replace that flooring product over and over and over, that number gets bigger and bigger. Because tile lasts for essentially the length of the building, 60 to 75 years, there's a case to be made that you don't have any replacement of that product as long as you're maintaining it correctly, and you only have to count all those impacts once. So as the government is hashing through what the requirements are for carbon footprint of products, let's say, they've been concentrating a lot on the manufacturing part and then sort of letting it slide on how often do you have to replace the product. And the tile industry has been very active in pushing back and saying, hey, this really, really matters to us. If you're putting in a flooring product that only lasts 5 years and the manufacturer says it only lasts 5 years, and then you're comparing it to tile that can last for 60 years, there's a definite difference there. You need to factor in the fact that you have to replace it every 5 years as opposed to just put it in once and leave it. So the tile industry knows we have a great message around durability, how long it will last. We just need to continue to keep that message front and center when these discussions are being had in back rooms about what is going to be the requirements for these big term programs. And the government is actively working on trying to put up definitions for how much carbon something could emit, et cetera. We need to keep that front and center that, hey, I can make a really low carbon product that only lasts a year, but that's not really doing anybody any good if it ends up in the landfill. So just to give you a little behind the scenes about what the tile industry is actually lobbying in the background to try to keep tile front and center, because we do have a great story to tell. So again, this is all sort of wrapped up in this, how long will it last? So usually documents like EPDs do have a service life, and that's where if you're comparing an EPD for a tile to an EPD for, say, carpet, that EPD for carpet is also based on the same reference life, so it has to have been replaced probably 3 times in the same amount of time that the tile installation will just last the life of the building. I know it's a little complicated, but it really does get to the heart and soul of why you might want to use tile instead of some of these other products. One of the other notes I have on this slide, premature deterioration of a tile installation is preventable. So really you need to make sure you're maintaining that installation as well. So really there shouldn't be a reason why tile has to be taken out unless it's gotten to the end of the useful service life for that building. I put in here gratuitous promotion for some of our products, but I do that because our products are designed to make your tile installation last a lot longer and be last a lot longer in a way that we don't ever have to replace them. So ways that you can keep your tile looking great beyond just slapping it down to directly to the substrate is to use things like uncoupling membranes, which keep the tiles from being exposed to the stresses underneath and from the substrates, which could keep it from cracking. It could keep your grout from deteriorating. It could keep moisture problems from coming up from below. So these products are out there for a reason. They're really designed to help make the installation last longer. Same with waterproofing systems. A lot of the theory behind having a whole system for waterproofing is because we're seeing in the industry a lot of failures around this concept that, hey, tile and grout are waterproof. Well, they're not. It's what's below them that should be waterproof. So you really need this whole waterproof envelope to put the tile over. Otherwise, you'll be tearing that shower out in 3 years, and that doesn't help. It all goes to the landfill. So you want to make sure that what you're doing will lend itself to overall longevity. Tile profiles. If you want to keep the edges from chipping, this is a great way to make the installation last longer. I put in here also tile over tile primers. These have become popular in the last probably 10 years. So the reason people replace tile floors, besides it cracked or broke, is because it no longer fits the aesthetic of the of the office or building that it's in. So people want to put new tiles in to freshen up that space. You can either tear all that old tile out and send it to the landfill, or you can just put tile directly on top of it. And so these tile over tile primers really do have a sustainability impact because you don't have to tear out the old stuff to put in the new stuff. So something to consider. It's not for every single installation, but if it fits for your needs, consider that tile over tile primer as a way to extend the surface life of the entire floor. And then of course there's grout and tile cleaners and colorants that can refresh the floor without having to replace all the tiles or take out the grout and put new grout in. So you don't often think about it in the sustainability context, but maintenance and doing it right from the ground up really do impact how long that tile sits there and how long the floor can last. One of the next questions we had on the slide, how does tile compare with other products? So we know we've got this great story. The challenge has been from the tile industry perspective, how do we communicate that? So TCNA has actually put together a number of studies on comparisons between tile and other flooring choices. And they're right in the middle of the TCNA handbook. I was showing you in one of the earlier slides, that green section. Right behind that is some of these comparison slides. And these are great reference if you're talking to customers about whether they want to use tile versus engineered wood, or they want to use tile versus LVT, or tile versus carpet. All of these numbers can really help you in having that discussion. So the first one is global warming potential. You remember I highlighted that when we were talking about our EPD. Other floorings have EPDs, so we can extract that number from their EPD and compare it to ours. And if you see, I'm going to try to do this with my mouse. I haven't lost my mouse. It happened last time too. Okay, so down here, this is the green box, North American ceramic tile. And this is global warming potential, assuming a 75-year lifespan of the floor. So as we go up, we get through vinyl tile, LVT, rigid core, LVP, VCT, homogeneous vinyl, rubber flooring, types of carpet, and as you get all the way to the back, various broadloom carpets. Because you have to replace them more, because there's a lot of energy involved in making them, because they are created with petroleum-based products, all of those create a global warming potential that is higher than it is for tile. So for years, the thought process is, well, use natural gas to fire tile, so there's a lot of energy in there. But when you start to actually do the math on all the energy that goes into the other products too, and then how often you have to replace those to outlive or live the same amount of time as a tile floor, turns out that ceramic tile is the lowest impact as opposed to the highest impact of all these categories. So kind of getting towards the end of our slide, does it give me points for, and then question mark. So there's a lot of green building certifications. If only there was a concise summary of how ceramic tile obtains points in those various programs. Ooh, so I apologize. This is not a great visual slide, but it does point you back to the TCNA handbook. And what you're seeing is, again, these are the attributes, these are points. And so each one of these is a point that you can get through documentation provided by the tile industry. And then these are the programs and how they comply. So this is LEED, this is the Green Construction Code, this is the NHB National Green Building Standard, this is Green Globes. So each one of these has the exact place that you can go in LEED or in Green Globes with the numbers listed to try to get points in that program, and then that shows you where tile fits into that whole big picture. So if you're working on any of these programs, flip open to the middle of the TCNA handbook, and you can get the exact number of and numbers for which credits you can get for that program using tile. Kind of a neat chart. It's one that I know Bill Greasy works hard to maintain, make sure that it's up to date, because these things do tend to change over time. Another comparison tool that the tile industry has worked on is cost comparison. So this is a life cycle cost analysis as opposed to just a life cycle analysis. The idea here is over the 75-year span of that floor, how much does it cost to have and maintain tile? And you can see it's right around $1 per square foot. It's the lowest certainly on this list. And as you go up the list, it costs more per square foot because you're not getting the same amount of longevity out of that product. So if you're talking to a building owner who actually owns the building and is going to continue to maintain it and continue to rent it out, this type of discussion starts to say, okay, tile isn't even the most expensive product to put in there. There's always that mindset of, oh, vinyl's cheap. Well, it's cheap up front, but then every time you have to replace it, that cheap up front goes away and you're left with, okay, I've had to replace my entire floor. So trying to get your hands around some of the costs. This, again, this chart is available in the TCNA handbook. A good reference for anybody who's trying to steer a customer towards tile. Just a little bit of a discussion about where to find this stuff online, because increasingly these online databases are becoming more and more important. There have always been services that try to be the end all and be all of where everybody should go to get sustainability info. I've seen several of them come and go over the years as I've been in this role. Right now, products, the TCNA is using Ecomedes. Ecomedes is a website that is a database of products. It also features all of the different rating systems. So if you're doing a LEED project, you can click on USGBC, get to the LEED program, and it actually shows you the products where you can get LEED points by using that product. You can do the downloads of the HPDs, the EPDs, and all that sort of thing. So for TCNA, they have green squared, all the green squared products are listed in Ecomedes. For us as individual manufacturers, it's, do we follow that same path or do we do something else? For Schluter, we have also been including our products in the Ecomedes database. And so if somebody goes in and wants to do a LEED project, for instance, they can pull over our products, get the points that they would get for that LEED project, and immediately be able to download the PDFs for our HPD, our EPD, our VOC information. All the stuff we just talked about is here and available online. Again, this is not the end all be all. There are a bunch of other databases out there. There's a bunch of other websites out there. You may be using a different one, but they all kind of try to do the same thing. They're trying to give you the information for the products you select so you can make informed decisions on your sustainability project. One last plug here for the Flooring Sustainability Summit. Hopefully you went to the one this year. This year was the first one. It was in Washington, D.C. Very well attended. The Flooring Sustainability Summit, the idea is to get not just the tile industry, but all of the floor covering associations there, and to have some pretty frank discussions with the legislators that are working on these sustainability legislation, sustainability numbers for what products have to hit. And it was really an excellent event where you had people from EPA, you had people from the government, from all of the, Ecomedes was there, LEED was there, USGBC, all of the people behind the scenes and the slides I just showed you were all there to have discussions about where their piece of the puzzle fit into the overall grand scheme. There's another one coming up next year, July 16th and 17th. I really do encourage you to save those dates and come to Washington, D.C. and join in on that whole experience. It will really drive your understanding of sustainability quite a bit higher as you're sitting in the room with some folks that live and breathe this day to day, every day for their career. So it was an excellent event. I recommend it for anybody who's on this call for 2025. Cursor back over here. Some other resources to think about, whytile.com, that's the sort of marketing arm of TCNA, has done a great job of summarizing everything I just said into a guide for going green with ceramic tile. I do recommend that you read through it. A lot of the information will be, you'll remember it, that we've covered it through this webinar, because the themes, the information people are asking for and the way that it's being doled out don't really change that much. Even though the question can take different forms, the way to answer the question usually hits one of the categories that we just talked about. So ytile.com, this is all free. You can get on there and get the guide to going green with ceramic tile. There's a lot of other good sustainability information on there as well. And then if you want to reach out to me, sustainability@schluter.com. The TCNA handbook is available electronically. You can get that through tcnatile.com. That includes that whole green section in the middle that I showed you on the first slide. And there's a lot of more great information on ytile.com. So Jim, that was what I had for the prepared slides. Do we have any questions that came in while we were talking?
Dan, before people leave, I just want to make sure that everyone knows you can watch this. As I mentioned at the beginning, some of you came a little later. You can watch this whole presentation, this webinar, at the NTCA YouTube page. Just go to NTCA's website, and right on the homepage, you'll see the little YouTube button. Push that YouTube logo, and it'll take you right to where our YouTube channel is, and click on videos, and you'll be able to watch us at your convenience anytime. Dan, that was a lot of information, and I certainly have questions. So everybody look at this email right here. There's a great way to get a hold of Dan and ask questions on this. Please don't hesitate. This is very important information, and Dan, you did a great job. You did such a good job, or else so many people are confused they didn't have any questions. So I'm just going to say thank you. I'm going to tell everyone, have a great holiday. Enjoy your holiday season coming up, and look for us. We'll be back on February 6th with our first webinar of 2025. Dan, you have a great time. Thank you so much. Everybody, I appreciate it, and enjoy.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye, everyone.